This is Standing Watch. And now, Evangelist Norbert Link.
Greetings everyone and welcome back to our Standing Watch program. We have been telling you for years, for decades, for almost a century, that a friendly relationship between the United States of America and Europe will cease. And it will be so bad that ultimately the hostility will end up in war. Now, many haven't believed this. Many still don't believe it today. But looking at what is happening right now, maybe some should wake up and understand that we have been right on this all along. I'm talking about the latest plan to bring about an end to the war between Ukraine and Russia. And of course, first we had a plan which was concocted, it seems, by Trump and Putin, a 28-point plan. And it was clear from the outset that Europe and the Ukraine would not accept that plan, which they didn't. Of course, Europe reacted very angrily about it because they were not consulted whatsoever. Neither was Ukraine. And then they came up with an alternate plan, and it was clear that Russia would not accept that one, which they didn't. And then the original Trump plan was revised to 18 points. And then Witkoff and Kushner went to Moscow to sell that plan, and of course Putin rejected that, so this whole trip was good for nothing, like the earlier meeting between Trump and Putin in Alaska didn't bring about anything. But Europe is still mad. The fact that these plans have been somewhat revised didn't do any good when it comes to the relationship between Europe, Germany in particular, and the United States. Welt Online, a German paper, wrote on November 21, European diplomats and government officials are reacting angrily to new details of the US peace plan intended to end the war in Ukraine. One EU government representative resorted to crude language to express his dismay. A leading EU politician said Witkoff needs to see a psychiatrist. T-Online, another German magazine, wrote on November 22, Trump's Ukraine plan has sent shockwaves through the G20. Europeans consider the development alarming. Europe was not involved in the negotiations with Russia, and Trump acted behind their backs. Chancellor Friedrich Merz was surprisingly clear in a press statement during the G20 summit. If Trump doesn't adjust his plan, he be on his own, or on Putin's side, he said. Trump wants peace at any price. He does not care how sustainable and beneficial this peace is for Europe, they feel. And then the article concludes with these alarming statements. Trump is one of the greatest dangers of our time, also because political assurances from Washington can hardly be relied upon anymore. That is pretty much the German concept, the German impression of what is happening. The Telegraph, a British paper, wrote on November 28, the United States is poised to recognize Russia's control over Crimea and other occupied Ukrainian territories to secure a deal to end the war. It's increasingly clear that Americans don't care about the European position. They say the Europeans can do whatever they want. The Daily Mail, another British outlet, wrote on November 28, and these are all pretty much conservative outlets, the move risks a major split with European governments that have repeatedly rejected any peace plans involving territorial concessions. European concern has intensified further after leaked recordings revealed Witkoff coaching Russian officials on appealing to the Trump administration. In those calls, he referred to Ukraine needing to give up Donetsk, prompting questions about whether U.S. envoys had already signaled willingness to support Russian demands. Politico, which is more left-leaning, wrote on December 1, Donald Trump's drive to secure peace in Ukraine must not let Vladimir Putin off the hook for war crimes committed by Russian forces. A top EU official has warned, effectively setting a new red line for a deal. Michael McGrath, the European Commissioner for Justice and Democracy, said negotiators must ensure the push for a ceasefire does not result in Russia escaping prosecution, something which Russia will never agree to. He goes on to say, his comments reflect concerns, widely held in European capitals, that the original American blueprint for a deal included the promise of a full amnesty for actions committed during the war, alongside plans to reintegrate Russia into the world economy. The Trump team's push to rehabilitate the Kremlin chief comes despite international condemnation of Russia for alleged crimes, including the abduction of 20,000 Ukrainian children and attacks targeting civilians. Now, Melania Trump has strongly condemned the abduction of these Ukrainian children. Now we are talking about a European nuclear option. Now what does that mean? Express wrote on December 1. Trump has fueled fears among European politicians that the White House is preparing to sacrifice a continent's security in exchange for US economic gain. European states are considering adopting the nuclear option of sinking the US economy. You heard that correctly. Of sinking the US economy if Donald Trump sells out Ukraine and endangers security on the continent. European leaders remain suspicious that Trump is rushing towards a geopolitical deal with Putin while paying little heed to the security concerns of NATO allies. The Wall Street Journal reports a European intelligence service has circulated internal assessments about commercial and economic plans the Trump team has been exploring with Russia behind closed doors. Sources told the Wall Street Journal that European leaders are considering adopting extreme countermeasures in retaliation designed to unleash economic chaos in the United States. Now that, my friends, affects all of us. Goes on to say, the alleged plan involves dumping trillions in US governmental debt owned by European states. A rapid sell-off would likely cause a crash in the value of the US dollar, create a liquidity crisis across the banking system, and cause a huge spike in borrowing costs. It would also lock the American financial sector into a paralysis more severe than the 2008 crisis. A leading European economist described the plan as a potential financial whiplash that could hit the US harder than any external shock in modern history. The political consequences would likely be disastrous for Trump and the Republicans as the midterm elections approach next year, which in all likelihood they're going to lose anyhow. Goes on to say, the EU and the UK are among the largest holders of US Treasury securities, US debt, which gives them significant potential economic leverage. Combined, it's approximately $2.34 trillion, making the EU-UK bloc one of the single largest foreign holders of US debt. Did you know that? Did you know that? But that's not all. Let's talk about tariffs. CNBC wrote on December 1. Costco sued the Trump administration to get a full refund of new tariffs it paid so far this year and to block those import duties from continuing to be collected. Costco said it risks losing the money it has already paid to satisfy the tariffs even if the Supreme Court eventually upholds earlier lower courts' rulings that found President Trump did not have the legal power to impose those duties. Dozens of other companies have filed similar lawsuits to protect their right to potential refunds in case the Supreme Court rules against the tariffs. The Trump administration is deeply alarmed. They have warned of the potential fallout of having to refund hundreds of millions of dollars in tariffs if the Supreme Court upholds the lower court rulings, and of course they couldn't collect any further tariffs in the future. Now, whatever happened to this money? Where did it go? Have the American people benefited from it? Did prices go down? Just the opposite. Prices are still going up. And housing is completely unaffordable. And so when it comes to benefits, the idea is like, oh, we are collecting those tariffs so that we can pay down our national debt. Well, at this point, the national debt is rising and rising and rising. I want to give you a little bit of some information insofar as the national debt is concerned. The national debt, $38.40 trillion. You heard that correctly. $38.4 trillion. Trillion, that's already an amount you can hardly even imagine. 1 trillion has 12 zeros. You can perhaps remind yourself of 4 groups of 3 zeros each. 12 zeros for 1 trillion, but we're talking about $38 trillion. Each American would need to pay about $110,876 to pay off the current U.S. national debt. But that includes even children and non-working adults. If you just talk about working adults, the amount would even be higher. Within the last 9 weeks, it has spent $104 billion in interest, or more than $11 billion in interest a week. Projections show net interest payments will total $13.8 trillion over the next decade, or $1.8 trillion annually by 2035. And now imagine creditors come in and say, okay, pay us back. It would be a complete, utter economic downfall. And that's just the economy I'm talking about. My friends, the Bible is very clear. It is obviously in line with what we are seeing right now. America is going down and down and down, and the downfall is inevitable. And at the same time, Europe is coming together as a very powerful and economic bloc, and ultimately the quote-unquote friendly relationship, which never has been that friendly anyhow, between Europe under German leadership and the United States of America will completely be thrown out of the window. That's what's prophesied, that's what's going to happen, and you had better listen and watch, and we will keep you informed about these things. And so I thank you very much for your attention. Until next time, this is Norbert Link for the Standing Watch program.
Standing Watch is a presentation by the Church of the Eternal God, P.O. Box 270519, San Diego, California 92198. More information is also available at our website, eternalgod.org.